One of the weekend's biggest surprises was when Prairie View A&M decided to not extend Bubba McDowell's contract and start their search for a new head coach. Oh yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
On family, welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, aka the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off doesn't mean that the journey's over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. We'll wrap up today's episode with a look at the difference in how FAMU approached their offensive game plan. It's drastically different than the majority of games they played this year, which makes sense because they have a new offensive play caller. In segment 2, we'll look at South Carolina State and Jackson State because they kept their foot on the gas. And I think this is a great sign of who their coaches really are. And they are Eddie Robinson Award finalists or semifinalists, I believe, But we kick this thing off with a coach who ain't even a coach no more, unfortunately, and that is Bubba McDowell out of Prairie View A&M. This one really did catch me off guard. And depending on who you listen to on social media, this may have caught some PV people off guard. Maybe didn't catch some of them off guard. It seems like it's kind of a split. I think that I would say the majority of people did not see this coming. Part of that group maybe just didn't think it would happen, but thought it should. It was something like that because to me, an outsider essentially, it looked like you have two really good seasons. You have a bad year, and now he's gone. That's what it looked like with Bubba McDowell. And I think that's very surface level. So let's get through some of the surface, and then we can get into some more deeper conversations about it. Because I do think as you get into it and you start digging, you start looking. Once you start looking for what they possibly saw to decide they wanted to move on, it becomes a little bit easier to rationalize this decision. Even if you don't necessarily agree, which I can't say that I do personally, but I think that there's more at play, but I can't say that I agree with this decision, but I can rationalize and understand why it is that PV came to this conclusion. One thing that's important to note is that he was not fired. His contract was up, and they decided not to extend him. You may feel like that's just semantics. You may feel like, why are you even bringing that up? To me, I find it as a valuable point because this means that fired versus not extending your contract typically is a reflection of the anger level with your performance, right? If you're fired, we just can't have you here anymore. Like, we are absolutely disgusted with what you do. We can't have you as a part of this program. I feel like when you're just not extended, you probably wouldn't have been fired. I can say that you probably wouldn't have been fired, but maybe we're just dissatisfied. Both are examples of not being satisfied, but I would say the degree to which you're upset with that person's performance is drastically different. It's just, hey, I think we could do better. I think we could do better without you. The other one is like, yeah, you are absolutely counterproductive to winning. That's how I view it, right? So to me, I think they just don't think the future is that bright. Overall, I didn't see it coming. Like I said, outside looking in, you look at the last 2 years prior to this year, and this year is bad. Don't get me twisted. This year is bad. But if you go beyond this year and you look at the other 2 seasons that Bubba McDowell has been around, they've been pretty successful years. Most people would take that. To me, in the West, I don't think anybody has been better, period, in the SWAC, but I don't think anybody has been better than Jackson State and FAMU over the last couple of years, right? that's just been the top dogs. So when you're looking at that, not being able to compete with the East, I don't think is that big of a slight to him. I don't think that that's too big against his resume, though there are some other aspects of it. In general, it looks like 2 good years followed by a complete plummet, and then you're moving on. It could be argued that this is a rushed decision. Then you look a little bit deeper, and I think that KT Mosley brought up a great point about the athletic director who was hired in 2023. This means he has absolutely no loyalty to Bubba McDowell. Being hired in 2023, this was not his hire. This was not his decision. This was not his process. There's so many things that go into hiring a head coach that if you weren't a part of that, there's just no allegiance. It's not, I'm looking to backstab you. It could be that he was looking to move on and find somebody that was his own coach. And now that the contract is up, it gave him that opportunity. That very well could be the case, which is what I think the point KT Mosley was making. Great article on HBCU Legends. You should go check it out. But the other aspect of it is I don't hold that bond with you. So I'm looking at everything, and I may grade you a little bit harsher because I have no reason to give you the benefit of the doubt. And if you don't give him the benefit of the doubt, he has some bad moments in there. There are some bad moments in Bubba McDowell's tenure. You may just feel like, hey, you are not the coach that's going to lead us to the promised land. 3 seasons, right? Let's remember, 3 seasons, one of which was absolute garbaggio. This past year was terrible, but it's the first time he's ever had a losing record on the conference level or overall. He's never had a losing record prior to this. He had a 500 record last year when he lost to FAMU in the SWAC championship game. But in the regular season, he had a winning record of 6-5, right? So you're looking at these things, but I'm looking back to 2022. Yeah, 2022, last game of the year, you're going against Mississippi Valley State and you lose pretty decidedly. You lose 27-7. That was only Valley's second win that season. That's unacceptable. I don't care that they beat you the year prior. First off, that ain't even your tenure. You were a part of that, but it also didn't stop anything. You still made it to the SWAC championship, but that was a little bit concerning. Now I'm looking at 2024, this year that you absolutely plummet. You rank high in penalties. You're a very undisciplined football team. Undisciplined football always reflects on the coaches. I don't care if that player was undisciplined before they got there. That will always be a reflection of coaching, right? Like, for example, I'm a Saints fan. Trevor Penning had some real penalty issues. That to me was a reflection of, yes, his play style, but I don't care what he plays like. You didn't get that together. You didn't reel him in. That is a problem with the coaching. Discipline will always reflect on coaching, even if that's not the entirety of the story. So you have all of these things. Now let's look at it. This UAPB game this year, you probably want to win that. They right there with you. You want to be a better program. You got to beat the lower level teams. That Southern game, you feel like you should have won that. That was let go. TSU, I don't think you ever had that game in hand, but that may be the problem, that you never had that game in hand. And that's not to put salt in the wound. I'm just being real about the games that you lost this year if you're Bubba McDowell. I personally feel like he had earned the right to see a year, maybe 2 years, get some sort of extension with a low buyout if you were going to go multiple years, but at least a year, maybe 2, to show I'm much more like the 2022-2023 version. That's how I feel. But maybe you looked at moments in that season and said, even that's not good enough. You are not the championship coach who is going to take us to the promised land. I'm seeing FAMU teetering off. I'm seeing Jackson State. I'm seeing people in the West still not just accelerating past us. We feel like we can catch up with everybody. Just not with you. Hate that. But that's what it looks like to me. And because your athletic director did not hire you, he's not spent years with you. He's spent 2 seasons with you. I think he was hired in the summer of 2023. I think he was hired then. Because he has no loyalty to you. I don't want to say no loyalty. There's no loyalty to you. These things don't get swept under the rug. We peel the rug back and we look at everything that's been swept under and we say, oh, this room is actually messy. It's time to clean house. Now let's move on to two teams who are not going to be cleaning house anytime soon. That's Jackson State and South Carolina State. Both of these squads have wrapped up their postseason future. But when you look at how they closed out the regular season, you would think that they were hungry like the first game of the year. Let's break all of that down as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. And Gametime is the only place that I go for my tickets. Thanksgiving game in Dallas, right? In Arlington, actually, but the Dallas Cowboys. Cheap tickets. You look at the Monday night game between the Cowboys and the Bengals, cheap tickets. You look at the Stars games. You look at Mavericks games. You look at comedy shows. It's not just athletics. We run an athletics show. We talk about going to these venues and these events, but you also have concerts, comedy shows, theater plays, everything that you could possibly want. You just want to know what's happening in your local area. You go to Gametime, use Gametime picks. They can show you a bunch of things that are catered towards you once you start, purchasing and whatnot. And you just make that decision. They let you know everything that's happening, whether that's this weekend, whether that's this month, whether that's the rest of the year. You can look in advance. I seen tickets for the circus, for the Universal Circus. It's just about what you want. Regardless of what it is, you go to Gametime, download the app, create an account, and you get $20 off your first purchase if you use the code LOCKEDONCollege. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege and get $20 off your first purchase. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day for your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On College Football, Locked On SEC, Locked On ACC, Locked On Big 10, Locked On Big 12. We get into conference titles, season, and all the scenarios that come with it are hectic, and they all impact the college football playoffs. My brother and sister shows are great for this time of the year, just like we are when we're talking about the SWAC championship coming up next year. Next week, excuse me. One team that's already punched their ticket is Jackson State. One team that's punched their ticket to the Celebration Bowl because there is no MEAC championship is South Carolina State. Neither one of these teams played like a squad that knew they had it wrapped up. Both of these teams played like a squad that wanted to show we are the best. And I understand that sounds typical, and I understand that. Why are you applauding that? Because I've seen so many times when teams let that foot up off the gas. I've noticed myself this year not letting my foot off the gas. But one thing I've noticed this year is that I've been hyper-focused on trap games. I don't know why that's the case. I don't know why I've been sitting here looking like, okay, is this a trap game? Is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? I don't know. But I've noticed it the most with South Carolina State. I haven't done this with Jackson State. Honestly, I dogged Southern so much in the beginning of the year, I don't think I could ever formulate the words trap game. And the pressure was always right on them. I thought about it a little bit with JSU. I did. And I think scheduling lent itself to JSU not having a trap game. But when you look at the MEAC, it was a lot of front-loaded, man. South Carolina State took on North Carolina Central and Howard in their second and third MEAC games. Right? Like there wasn't much football to be played before that happened as far as conference play goes. So I'm looking like, okay, well, the next game, are you going to fall in? Because you beat Central, and it's like you are ascending. Also, there wasn't much pressure on them before that game. There wasn't much pressure on South Carolina State because of the whole spiel that Chennis gave after the game. Oh, we D2 guys. We a D2 coach. There wasn't a lot of belief that the Bulldogs would ascend to this height immediately. And I'm guilty too, because I didn't think it would happen this fast. Did I think it would happen? Yeah, I did. I thought it would happen, but I did not think that it would happen this quickly. So I wouldn't say there was a lot of pressure on them. Then you realize when you come to this North Carolina Central game after hanging, I think it was 69 on Delaware State, if I'm not mistaken. You hang a boatload of points on your previous opponent, and now you're looking like the best or second best team. So pressure is on you now. You play North Carolina Central, the lights are on. It's Thursday night, Halloween Thursday night. Everybody has their attention on this game and nowhere else. You deliver. Okay, cool. Now you got Howard. It's like, are you going to have a letdown because of how important that this game was? And Howard hasn't been looking overly amazing, even though I think they were coming off their best offensive performance that time. No, you going to come and you going to smash them too, right? Then you go to the next game and you got Morgan State. Morgan State only has one loss. Morgan State, though, does not look like a real championship contender. So are you going to let them catch you slipping? No, you're going to beat them too. Then you get to Norfolk State and there's no pressure. There's no stakes. You won the MEAC last week or the week prior, right? Like you won the MEAC. There's no pressure on you. Everybody knows what type of situation that you're walking into. This game don't matter that much. And games that don't matter that much feel like trap games. Games that don't matter that much, you can let your foot off the gas because who really cares? If South Carolina State lost this game to Norfolk State and they just was taking it easy, I think that most people outside of Jackson State fans and Southern fans would say, oh, they probably just let they foot off the gas because they didn't have anything to play for. And I know that's probably flawed logic. Most teams should, but you can tell me that most teams should do this. But I would ask you, how many teams have you seen fail to do it? And I bet you the answer would be quite a bit. It would not be uncommon to you to see a team have a lot of high emotion games, high stake games, get to one that's low emotion, low stake, and just lay kind of an egg or not bring that same energy. That didn't happen with South Carolina State. Chennis Berry talks. I haven't heard Chennis Berry ever lay off in any moment that he's talking. He always is on the gas when he's speaking. I would love to see him have a regular, calm conversation. The grizzle to his voice just feels a little like, oh, it's go time at all moments. That man don't know how to have an off switch. Then you look at Jackson State. I think Jackson State had a little bit of an edge here because they are going into a rivalry game. You're going against Alcorn. I think having a rivalry game when everything is lined up for you and everything is done, it kind of adds that extra sense of motivation. When you have Alcorn, you know, well, we want to smack them because that's Alcorn. Isaiah Guthrie posted a clip talking about at the toss, he knew the game was over. Okay. I don't know what that really had to do at this point, but that was hilarious to me, so I just wanted to mention it. Anyway, you look at Jackson State versus Alcorn, yeah, you're not letting your foot off the gas there, but you ain't have to smash them like that. You ain't have to do them like that. I'm talking about this game got ugly. 48 points. 48-10. 48 is the second most points that Jackson State has scored in SWAC competition. 10 is the second least amount of points scored against them in SWAC competition. 38-point margin of victory is the tied for the most points they've won by in SWAC competition. This was one of their best performances. Yeah, they punted on the first drive, four plays, quick and out of here. They said, we ain't like that. We're going to go 57 yards on the next play. One play touchdown. Then we're going to come hit you again. Then we're going to come hit you again. Hit you again. Hit you again. When you look at it, after that first drive, they scored on 8 of their next 11 possessions. That's not letting your foot off the gas. That's why I appreciate these teams. And no disrespect to Southern, who was in the same position as Jackson State. They just didn't play. And matter of fact, they'll have a rivalry game the next week as well. Neither one of these teams looked like they were complacent. Neither one of these teams felt like we accepted that we know what we're going to do after the regular season. And I appreciate that. That's why Chennis Berry, T.C. Taylor, and Eddie George, who wasn't mentioned here, but all three of those men are semifinalists for the Eddie Robinson FCS Coach of the Year award. I actually think it's finalists. But anyway, they're on the short list of people. That's the point. Whether it's semi or not. This group, they have special traits. And you've seen it with Jackson State all year. You've seen it with South Carolina State all year. There have been moments in which you could be distracted from this, but you have seen it consistently. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. This is going to be crazy. I think that these two are going to match up in the celebration mode. That's my expectation. I think it's going to be crazy when they do. I genuinely do. But we can't look past Southern. We can't look past Southern because that SWAC championship game, it's just going to be different stakes. Both of these squads are different. So we'll see how it turns out. Anyway, let's get into FAMU because they've changed their style. And we're going to get into this real quickly, and then we'll get out of here as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. I don't care if it's the NBA, the NFL, the NHL. I don't care if you're trying to already put money down on next year's MLB. Could be gymnastics, could be soccer, could be UFC, could be boxing, could be anything. Could be anything. You make some money on FanDuel. You get your pockets up. All right. That's my message to you. Because if you know sports the way I believe you do, you're checking me out. So you got a little bit of taste. You got a little bit of taste. You go ahead and know what you're talking about and make some money for knowing what you're talking about. Not just talking with your boys, talking with your girls. Don't just be doing that. Go put some money down on Justin Jefferson. Did you know that the Bears are going to take him away and TJ Hawkinson or Jordan Addison was going to go crazy? If you knew things like that, you expected things like that, it's on you to go ahead and make a little bit of bread, make a little bit of cash on the upcoming game. So whether that's Giannis Antetokounmpo, whether that's Anthony Edwards, whether that's Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, you go ahead and make yourself a little bit of money on FanDuel.com. If you're new to it, put down a $5 bet. If it wins, you get $150 back in bonus bets. It's simple, it's easy, and it's the smart thing to do. Go to FanDuel.com, make every moment more. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. FAMU has a new offensive play caller, Henry Burris, right? And for the last 2 games of the season, the first one being the Bethune-Cookman matchup, he will be calling plays instead of Joseph Henry. And with this change, I wanted to know, what does the new offense look like? Because that's a real question that we didn't know the answer to until we knew the answer to it. And in this game, at least, it was run heavy, which is a tad bit surprising because Burris comes from being the quarterback's coach. But also, he sat there and he watched in the background. And I want to tell you about how they used the run significantly more. They were way more effective with the run, and how it actually follows the last time they did this, they put up points. FAMU has scored 30 or more points twice this year. And both times that they did it, they ran the ball a lot. Let's look at this game against Texas Southern. All right, so against Texas Southern, you put up 52 points, but you put up 45 on the offensive side. Actually, I think you may have. I know there was a kickoff return, but it may have been more than that. But anyway, you score 40-some-odd points offensively if you're FAMU against Texas Southern. Let's see what you did in that game. You ran the ball 36 times. It's the most that you ran the ball all year. It's the most that you ran the ball all year until you got to Bethune-Cookman. 52 points running 36 times with Texas Southern. 41 points running 47 times against Bethune-Cookman. You see the similarities here? And it's not just how much you ran the ball. You look at Thad Franklin. 26 times Thad Franklin ran the ball. You got to add up Thad Franklin's last 4 games to get to 26 carries. That's not how you use them. That's infrequent the way that you use him. You look at him and Kelvin Dean, they add 40 carries by themselves. The last time that FAMU got to 40 carries in a year was never. This year. Thad Franklin had 195 yards by himself. The last time that FAMU had 195 yards as a team was Texas Southern. You scored 52 points. The ability to run the ball and run the ball effectively in 2024 has been directly correlated to scoring more points for the Rattlers. The numbers are undeniable. Against TSU, you run the ball 36 times, 52 points. You run the ball 47 times against Bethune-Cookman, 41 points. Like, yeah, you got some games in here where you ran it more than 30 times against Alabama State, one of the best defenses in the SWAC. So, no, you didn't put up a lot of points in that matchup. The other one against South Carolina State. Like that, you're not running the ball frequently. Thad Franklin never does this. Thad Franklin ain't ran the ball 26 times all year. He was probably shocked that he got that usage. 26 times, 195 yards, 3 touchdowns. Kelvin Dean ran the ball 14 times, 103 yards, a touchdown. Daniel Richardson threw the ball 20 times. He's thrown the ball that little amount twice. Once was in a game he got hurt against PV, and he got hurt early with 13 pass attempts. Against Miami, he threw the ball 17 times. That's D1 competition. This is a rarity. This is a rarity that you see this game plan, but I can see that's what Henry Burris is already aiming to do, and that's the difference. We'll see if that continues next week, and then we'll really know that that's what Henry Burris is about. But as of right now, the biggest difference is that Henry Burris came in and said, we're going to run the ball. And they ran the ball extremely effectively. They ran for 300 yards. They haven't ran for 300 yards all year. They ran for 200 and something against TSU. You had Thad Franklin by himself almost getting 200. This was the most effective and used running game that you've seen out of them in 2024. I would love to see if this is Henry Burris's plan moving forward. I don't know. We would have to wait and see. I think he'd be smart to lean into it. Daniel Richardson is a very talented quarterback, but this recipe has worked. It's worked twice. Was it against great teams? No, it wasn't against great teams. So you'll have a slight step up in competition when you go to Alabama A&M. This will be interesting, but you do not abandon the plan. What works against bottom feeders may not work. Even though, my boy, hey, we ain't no bottom feeders, though. Let me cut that out. It worked against the bottom feeder of Bethune-Cookman, maybe. But no, just seriously. Actually, Alabama A&M, Texas Southern, they feel about toss-up to me. So you do this against Alabama A&M. Let's see what happens. So tomorrow, we riding that HBCU circuit, going all the way from the independents to the teams whose season is over to the teams whose season is still going on. We got, 5 to 6 HBCUs who are still playing? 3 who will be playing beyond this week, but Alabama State, Alabama A&M, and FAMU all have games this week. So, yeah, we got 6 HBCUs who are still in action. We'll ride that circuit with all of the squads, though, on tomorrow's episode. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.